So what if I told you that your phone in your pocket is frying your balls right now as we speak, turning your rock hard erection into a limp noodle? Now this is a conversation that most men are not ready to have, but it's a necessary one. There's been an increase of younger men, and I'm referring to men 40 and under, dealing with ED, erectile dysfunction. These type of conversations with younger men are really kind of, few and far between because it would always get linked back to performance anxiety, right? So I think in any case, after it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, you go, you get in there, you try it, you're like, damn, I didn't perform well, right? I didn't perform like I wanted to, right? There's some things that I wish I could have did a little bit better, a few more positions that I could have done to last a little bit longer, right? Or to get me in that mode, right? So when that happens, understand there's going to be some level of performance anxiety, beloveds. But let's get to the very crux as to why younger men are struggling with erectile dysfunction, and not just erectile function, but also when you decide you want to go have kids, this is likely interfering with your fertility as well, beloveds. So with that being said, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that when we're talking about erectile function, right, we got a couple different components, right, that we have to take in mind. Of course, there's the mental piece, right? Performance anxiety and anxiety in general, or even just assuming that it's not going to work, right? So it won't, right? Also, thinking, am I attracted to this woman or not? Then the other piece you have to think about is blood flow, circulation, beloveds. Like I always preach, circulation is everything, right? Are your blood vessels intact? Do they have some type of dysfunction so that they're not producing nitric oxide the way you need them to, beloveds? And is there some other reason why blood flow isn't getting to where it needs to go? Then, of course, there's things like nerve function as well, right? Like, what are the nerves doing, right, around the erection? Are they firing and triggering off like they should be? And then, of course, there's the hormonal piece, right? How are my hormone levels, particularly talking about testosterone, right? So keeping those key things in mind, we're always addressing rather, erectile function from one of those different pathways, right? And we're addressing erectile power in one of those four ways too. So let's get to the nitty gritty, beloveds. Let's talk about cell phones and Wi-Fi, right? We are completely addicted to these mobile devices, beloved. And now that device, that umbilical cord to chaos, is radiating your masculinity, fellas, right? So your phone isn't just an object, it's a tool of energy exchange. And right now, it's a parasite draining your most valuable resource as a man, your family jewels, your testosterone, beloveds. Wi-Fi and all generations of, smartphones and mobile devices are classified as, radiation called non-ionizing radiation, right? And they fall within the microwave range of anywhere from like 3 to 300 gigahertz, right? So, when we're looking specifically at smartphones, the 3G versus the 4G versus the 5G. See, back in the day, we didn't have all this confusion, man. Like everything was just 3G, right? And that was just about 2,500 megahertz, right? Not gigahertz, megahertz of energy coming from that device. Now we're talking about 4G and 5G, which is basically, fourth generation and fifth generation. Because think about it, we're going up in the generation, right? So we want to go up in speed. In order to go up in speed, we have to go up in radiation, right? You understand that? So now we're dealing with frequency ranges between 2 gigahertz and 300 gigahertz, right? So this is this huge jump. And there have been plenty of studies that have tried to look at whether or not this EMF radiation or this electromagnetic field radiation or radio frequency radiation, how it's impacting the human body on a day-to-day basis, right? And what they're doing when they're looking at if they're looking at it in terms of standardized unit known as specific absorption rate, right? So this measures how much energy from radio frequency waves are actually absorbed by our tissues, right? And then it's calculated out as watts per kilogram. So I know I just said a mouthful, beloveds, but hear me out. That's just a fancy way of saying that for years now, they've been really studying how much of this radio frequency waves are actually absorbed by our tissue. And if so, how much damage is it actually doing, right? And as a matter of fact, most people don't even notice, But mobile phones, smartphones, are classified by the World Health Organization rather as a possible carcinogen, right? Meaning that it possibly causes cancer. Now, there's so much money in these devices, beloved. I'm talking about billions upon billions, that you'd be hard pressed to find anybody, any study, any doctor that's absolutely going to come out and say, yes, it's going to damage the body. Yes, it's going to damage sperm cells. Yes, it's going to damage your penis, right? It's going to cause harm, like long-term harm, right? But what I want to do is I want to look at the data, right? I want to look at what the data is telling us and look at what we know and what I've seen specifically from helping men when it comes to erectile dysfunction and keeping those phones as close to you as possible, right? So let's get into it. So according to the United States Federal Communications Commission, they're saying that the limit of SAR, which is specific absorption rate, should not exceed 1.6 watts per kilogram as averaged over a gram of tissue. Well, that's a stat for your ass, right? So basically what they're saying is that anything above that could potentially bother the tissue. Maybe not. And then another one. So the legal limit for RF radiation, radio frequency radiation, is 3.8 watts per kilogram versus that 1.6 that everyone is saying should be the limit. Crazy numbers, right? Cell phones have been labeled as possible carcinogens, right? But when they did a study, they took about 140 cell phones, right? This is when the iPhone got in trouble some years ago, when they found that the iPhone 12, when held in hand or carried in a pocket, like the level of electromagnetic energy absorption was like 5.74 watts per kilogram. And so basically, that was a little higher than the law allows. So it became this big thing, as the iPhone 12 being terrible for you. But let's break the science down in real terms. So the phone blasts EMF radiation, right? RF waves. What that means is that you are actively choosing to subject your body to invisible heat and stress. I'm going to repeat that one more time. What that means is you are actively choosing to subject your body to invisible heat and stress. The white coats, they call it oxidative stress. I call it accelerated aging. You are a man who's supposed to be building structure and flow, beloveds. But that phone right next to your temple, right next to your future, your jewels, your testicles, is creating friction, beloveds. It's creating a leak in your system. And let's be clear about one thing. You're going to hear a million excuses. I have to be available for my job. The man purse is soft, what they call the MERS, whatever, right? I need the wireless connection for the convenience, right? A man of structure finds a way to win without compromising his assets. So if your job requires you to keep that phone on your body, you best find a holster that places it on your hip, away from the assets. You find a laptop bag. You put the damn thing in the cup holder of your car instead of your lap, beloveds. You need to understand two things, fellas. First, the thermal effect, right? So that heat that you feel when you hold the phone to your head or when it's burning a hole in your pocket, like you think that heat is harmless. That heat is literally cooking the tissues that are responsible for the flow of man. You're heating your brain. You're cooking your foundation. You are willingly putting a microwave next to the source of your manhood, of your power, and you call that normal. Listen, I used to have a microwave years ago, right? When it broke, I never for a second thought about replacing it. Why? Because I didn't want to put radiation in the food that I'm consuming. I'm fine with using the oven. Think about how much radiation is being put in your body every time you warm up food, you cook food in the microwave, beloveds. Think about it. But I'm not going to go on a tangent. Let me get back to what I was saying. And then secondly, you want to think about the non-thermal effect, right? So this is the real snake in the grass. This is what I just referred to as oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is what ages blood vessels and ages our skin and ages the erection before it should age. So when you're thinking about it, when you think about oxidative stress, you always want to think, how can I counteract the effects of oxidative stress in the body, right? And we know we got to be around it, right? Listen, you got to use your cell phone. You got to use your computer. You got to use your laptop, right? So how do you counter affect it, beloveds? MANHOOD. So MANHOOD, it gets a rep for, libido, sex drive, what may have you, right? But it doesn't just make you horny. It makes your seed strong. It improves sperm concentration, sperm count, and most importantly, sperm motility, how well your seed is swimming, right? This is the physical evidence that your structure is clean. So when the sperm is vibrant, your testosterone production is efficient and your body is in flow. You are protecting your lineage while ensuring that your seed is the highest quality product possible. Every man should be taking marker root, beloveds. Tricolor marker root, red, yellow, and black. You need all three strands because marker is loaded with polyphenols, right? And these are, these are compounds, right? So when those reactive oxygen species, which is like that rust, are attacking your cells, marker has these antioxidants that neutralizes the rust before it can cause the premature death of your testosterone cells, right? So you got rust building in your pipes. The pipes are your blood vessels, right? And that rust is eating away at the endothelial cells, the lining that is supposed to produce nitric oxide flow that makes you perform as a man, right? But the radiation is accelerating the aging process. So you may be 31, 32, whatever, right? But your pipes are reading as if you're 64, 65. You have a body that is aged out of the fight process, beloved, because you gave it no armor, you gave it no structure to defend against the constant bombardment, right? That's why I tell every man to take your marker root. And if you don't have certain supplementation and things you need to make you optimal, you're never going to be at your best, fellas. Never. I would say it's a cheat code, and it kind of is. But do with that information what you will, right? You ain't gotta do it. Right? You don't gotta believe me. I'm doing it. My life is great because of it. If you do choose to, click the link in the description to get your tricolor marker root, right? So we know for a fact that hormones, right, mainly the testicles and the Leydig cells, are very sensitive to these forms of radiation. The radiation that's coming from our smartphones, the radiation that's coming from our Wi-Fi devices, right? And most people in their house, right? Most people have, the cell phones connected to your Wi-Fi device in your house. So it's coming from your Wi-Fi device and it's coming from your phone. And with this form of radiation, there's going to be a reduction in the cells that make testosterone in the testicles, and not just a reduction in the cells, but also a reduction in the production of healthy sperm cells. Get your marker root, fellas. Protect your manhood. It's not a game. This is serious business. So find new ways to carry your phone. I don't care how you got to do it, beloveds. Just find a new way to carry it because it will catch up with you. I've said it before. You need the MERS. Let's call it the MERS, right? I ain't gonna call it the man purse. Let's call it the MERS. The hell with what people gotta say. All those people gonna be around you when you can't sustain an erection for your lady, when your testosterone has tanked, when your energy is low. No, they're not. So stop giving a damn about what people gotta say. It's not a fashion statement. It's a functional requirement of a modern man. It gives you 6 to 12 inches of separation from your phone. So you transform that direct hit that's in your pocket into a minor exposure, right? It's a good move for a man who's prioritizing his equipment, his family jewels, over the opinion of a soft society. So with that being said, beloveds, that's my time. Till the next time, beloveds. If this hit, subscribe, hit the bell, get notified every single time that we drop. I love y'all, fellas. I want the most for y'all. God bless. I'm out.